Except, yeah, my last name is Weeman.
Well, thank you for being part of it.
Sure, of course.
So let's hear your story. Who's going to tell your story?
Well, when she was 13 years old, we were going to, I took her to the doctor for a well checkup, and they recommended that she get the Gardasil vaccine. And she had been diagnosed with diabetes a year before, and they told me that now she had diabetes and a weaker immune system. It was imperative that she got every vaccine that came out. And I was scared, I didn't know, and so I agreed to it. And she was going to go to Germany that summer by herself with her grandfather and spend 4 weeks out there. And so she was okay. She went to Germany, and I was afraid that she was going to be so shy and not be able to ask for juice or something if she needed it. But she did really good. And then when she came back, the first thing I noticed, she lost the ability to cry because one of our dogs had passed away. And when she asked for him, she was like trying to cry and couldn't, which was unusual because she was always very sensitive. And then the next thing I noticed was she just wasn't sleeping. Sleep just wasn't happening anymore. And she'd wander the house at night writing notes and things like that, and I couldn't figure it out, and I took her to the doctor, and they did some tests, and then she ended up having an ear infection from the plane and everything, coming back, and she got the second shot. And after the second shot, her heart started pounding so hard, you could see her chest moving, and things would happen where she would say, "Turn off the TV, stop talking, get out of the room. It's making me sick." And we thought, what's going on? So we thought she was having anxiety attacks or something. It just seemed weird. And so I took her back to the doctor, and she sent us to a couple of specialists, a gastroenterologist and a cardiologist, and she wore a heart monitor for 2 days, and they determined that her heart rate was high, but they didn't think anything of it, and sent her back to school. That school year, she was an honor roll student the year before, and then so she goes back to school 8th grade year, and she can't concentrate. She isn't retaining anything, and she's constantly wanting to go to the nurse, and the teachers were getting angry, and she was also, at this point, she had started throwing up when that thing would happen, when the voices made her sick and the faces made her sick. And so then she, at school, they were keeping a trash can next to her and stuff in case she had to throw up, and thought she was doing it for attention. And her personality just totally changed. She went from a very shy child to someone who thought everybody was her friend, and kids were making fun of her at school. They were having her kiss boys and stuff, and it was just crazy, absolutely crazy. She had changed 100%. She was running out of the house at night. She was telling people that she wanted to be adopted, that she hated her family. It was just crazy. I was beside myself. I had no idea. We go back to the doctor, and every time we'd see another specialist, and it was nothing. Here, take some antacids. And then at one point we went back to her endocrinologist, and she said, well, sometimes teenagers get tired of having diabetes and they act out. And I said, I really don't think that that's this at all. But she said, I want you to see the in-house psychiatrist or therapist or whatever. I said, okay, fine. So we come back to do that, and she talks to us for the first session, and then we come back for the second session, and she takes Alexis aside and talks to her by herself, and then I come in the room, and the doctor proceeds to tell me that she believes that her grandfather molested her when she was in Germany, and that's why she's acting out. And she said, if he was in this country, I would have already called the authorities, but since he's in Germany, it's up to you. And I was just I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. And she was telling me, no, nothing happened. And it was just, I had no idea what was going on. It was just insane. And so, of course, after that doctor, it was in the notes that they believed she had been molested, and I was a mother in denial. So every doctor after that saw those notes, and that's what they thought. So then, at this point, I'm like, could it have been the shot? And the doctor said, no, the shot couldn't have done this. Because I'm thinking, what in the world changed?
And
What
she's only had
happened?
2, God forbid.
Yeah, she's had 2. And so they kept telling me, no, it's not, but you have to have the 3rd, otherwise, things might go wrong. So I'm like, all right, so in January of 2007, she got the 3rd shot. Within 2 weeks, she was hospitalized. And she remained hospitalized for 8 solid months. 6 months here at the UNM hospital, and they did tons of tests on her, 2 spinal taps. They took tissue from her leg.
Now, why was she hospitalised? What was happening?
Because she was throwing up so much, and she wasn't sleeping. And they all kept telling me it's behavioral. It's behavioral. Because at one point, right before she was actually hospitalized, she was put into children's psychiatric. And that was horrible. That was absolutely horrible. They treated her like an animal. She wasn't allowed to talk to anybody else. She couldn't go only up and down the hall. And she was, like I said, she was throwing up at the time. Nobody recognized it as seizures. Nobody knew at that point. And so they gave her a bucket because they thought she was doing it on purpose. And they said, throw up in the bucket and you don't get anything else to eat. Well, she was there for 3 days, and they called me, and they said, we just witnessed something very disturbing. And I said, what's that? And they said, she's eating the vomit out of her bucket. Because she was so hungry, but nothing was staying down. And I was just blown away. And so then they wanted to put her on Risperdal or something, some other drug. They were pumping her up with all kinds of drugs. And then the next day they called and said, she's okay to come home. And I picked her up. She threw up in the car on the way home. She ate and threw up everything. And that night she didn't sleep. So I'm calling doctors begging, please, help. And they wouldn't do anything. And so finally I called her pediatrician. And she pulled some strings and got her into a different children's psychiatric unit, which was wonderful. They were really, really good. And from there, she was admitted into the hospital, where they were doing all kinds of tests trying to figure it out. Upon the first EEG, that's when they discovered she was having seizures, which nobody had ever mentioned anything about that before, because they didn't look like your typical seizure.
We hear this a lot with the Gardasil seizures.
Yeah, see, she's kind of having a little one right now.
And they change all the time from severity. They can be, very small ones like this to full-on grand mal seizures. And there's no pattern to them, rhyme or reason. They can happen. She can have up to 20 a day, over 20 a day. So, sometimes they're small like this, and sometimes they're really loud and really big.
Tell me how before this whole Gardasil nightmare, what kind of a girl was she? What did she love to do?
Oh, she was sweet as can be. Like I said, very shy. She loved to swim, go on the trampoline, hang out with friends. She was really active and loved life. Sweet little kid, wonderful. And I mean, she still is. The craziness and everything is behind us. It's like he said, it's changing all the time. So she doesn't have that crazy behavior or anything now, but
what a awful way to be treated. She's been so...
Oh, I know, and in the hospital, when she was in the hospital, they didn't know how to control her, because in pediatrics she would run and want to see the other kids.
I'm sorry this happened to you.
Oh, sweetie. And so they kept putting her in different departments in the hospital because they didn't know where to keep her. And at one point they had her, where they keep belligerent drunks and stuff. And I would go in the room and they'd have her 4-point restrained to the bed, strapped down. because, you know, she was trying to kick.
This is
and,
such an awful way to treat a human being.
and she's 15 years old at that point. She's 15, and I was, it just killed me. I hadn't, never in my wildest dreams could I have imagined anything like that. And so, like I said, she was hospitalized for 6 months there, and they did every kind of test, spinal taps twice. She had plasmapheresis, IVIG, all kinds of stuff. Infectious disease, everything was tested. And all they could determine was something caused encephalitis. And the encephalitis caused brain damage and the seizures. But there's not a specific spot. Like when she turned 16, she started begging for brain surgery. She wanted her brain better. And I'm like, what 16-year-old kid begs for brain surgery? So they can't pinpoint any spot because the seizures are everywhere.
Does anyone agree with you that this is a Gardasil injury?
Yeah, I've had a couple people. It's been hard because most people say no, it's not.
They don't even investigate, they just say no.
Yeah, no, it couldn't be, no way. But there have been a couple that agree with me and say that yes, those things do happen. And
so what's a day like? What's a day like for you? What can you? Is it just like this? We're just coping with the seizures.
Yeah, pretty much. You know, we got her an iPod for Christmas. She loves that. That is her just prized possession. And she gets on Facebook and she'll just sit like on the couch going like this. She falls asleep doing it. She'll be asleep and still like that. And
Well, yeah, a typical day, which, I mean, they're all the same, really. It's Groundhog Day for her. She'll be up, we usually get up about 6 in the morning, and she's already up downstairs because she sleeps so little. And she has an apple, and she takes her meds, meds as far as, what they prescribed her.
Is she on a lot of meds?
What are they, Tracy?
she's on, I can't remember one name, but she's on 2 different seizure medications and Klonopin to help her sleep.
Do any of these drugs work?
Not really. I mean, in the 9 years that since this happened, we've tried so many different kinds of medications, and some work for a little while and some make it worse. She was on one last year where she'd be standing up talking to you in the kitchen, and there was no warning, nothing whatsoever, and she would just fall flat on her face, just having a seizure.
It's a terrible vaccine.
So after breakfast, then her mom gives her a bath, and then she has to be assisted in that way. And then after her bath, I mean, that's really the highlight of the day. Really, from there, the only thing that she's able to do is just exist. Really, in the shell that she's in of a person. She. You would think, well, there would be some adaptive programs that she would be able to participate in, but she falls asleep often, like she's doing now. She has seizures. She doesn't. She's not able to work independently unsupervised with anything. So there's nothing really outside of the house that she would qualify for. So her mom spends her days with her.
I'm her caregiver.
That's what her mom does, and it's sleeping on and off and going on her iPad and interacting with family because Tracy doesn't have friends that come over often because you're alienated at that point in time. And there's lunch, and then there's dinner, and then some time at night, and usually about 9 o'clock she goes to bed.
And about 3 years ago, Andy said she has to have something to look forward to. We have to do something, so he told her, you're going to help me mow the lawn. And so he took her out there, and the first time was kind of funny because she was like, I don't want to do this. It's happening. And we said, no, it's not. We know when it's happening. Oh, yeah, it's happening. I'm going to fall. And he says, well, you're in the grass. It's soft out there. And so the first time was a little rough, but now she really looks forward to it on Thursdays after he gets home from work. I tell her, go get your mowing shoes on. She puts her mowing shoes on and waits for him. And then he finishes part of it and saves like a square for her to do. And we take pictures and video and post it on Facebook, and she has a lot of people that just look forward to Thursday mowing pictures. And this Thursday she wasn't able to mow, so I had to take a picture of a empty
lawnmower, sitting there all alone in the grass. But and it,
I just feel what a waste of how her life could have been.
Yeah, and
it
you
is,
know,
really is.
she ever since I can remember, she's always wanted to be a special needs elementary school teacher. You know, and how.
What do you say to the great many people out there that are about to go in with their daughters or their sons and have this vaccination?
Oh, please research. Do as much research as you can. As much research. I mean, this is a worldwide problem. This is happening to girls and boys all around the world. It's not isolated. It's not rare like they want you to think.
And to the paediatricians, healthcare providers that insist that this vaccine is safe?
Sure.
I tell them come to my house. Come to my house for a couple of days and see how it works out.